Transformation happens here on Unifying Family. Men on Monday, women on Wednesday. Real talk, real issues, real solutions. Unifying Family, building strong families. Well, good evening and welcome to today's edition of Men on Monday. It is Monday, the 22nd day of April, 2024. I am your host, Marissa Boyce, joined by our Men on Monday team, none other than Kevin Grant, Pastor Edison Bino, Minister Sinclair Brown, Bishop Mark, and the team. And all of you who are joining us and viewing with us, thank you for joining us wherever you are across the globe. It is good to have you with us today on this Monday, and I hope that your day's been good and your week has been productive. Your weekend was a good one and your day-to-day productive. Today we are talking about childhood trauma. But before we jump into it, let me greet the men and allow them to also greet you, our viewers, this evening. So let's start with Minister Kevin, Pastor Bino, Minister Sinclair, and end with Bishop Mark. Go right ahead. Oh dear, Minister Kevin, we're not hearing you. No, we're not hearing you. So I'll let you start that out. Let's jump to Bishop Pastor Bino, then we'll come back to you. Go ahead.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good to be back in the studio with these wonderful men and a lovely lady, Lady Marissa. And looking forward to discussing this topic with you. Blessings to everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Blessings to you each, and yeah, thank God I'm a wonderful person. So thank you, Bishop Pastor Maito, wonderful Marissa. Good evening. God blessings to everyone. Look forward to touch this topic. Let's empower men, empower families.
Well, good night, everyone. It's again a pleasure to be here among these distinguished guests, persons. Indeed, it's indeed a pleasure to be here. We look forward to some interesting discussion tonight. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for being with us on this Monday.
All right, so we're just giving Kevin, you're there? You're still crackling. We're not hearing you. Where did your voice go? Where did your sound go? We're not hearing you at all. Oh dear. All right, so let's see if we can let's take a break and let's see if we can resolve our issue right there with Minister Kevin this evening on Men on Monday. right, let's see if we resolved our sound issue there with Minister Kevin. Are you there? Are you ready? Have you resolved it? No, let's give him some time to join us, get it started, and rejoin us this evening. So we're talking about childhood trauma, and the reality is that when many people hear the word trauma, they tend to take a step back. It is not a very well visited issue. Not many people are very forthcoming with wanting to address it because sometimes it's a difficult conversation to have. And sometimes it forces people to explore areas that they've often hidden and, are forced to relive because they have to address it. So I'm going to allow Pastor Edison to get started with us this evening and to share, some background knowledge on just what childhood trauma really is. Go ahead, Pastor Bino.
Hey, good evening again, Marissa. The thing is that sometimes people may not even be aware that they have been through traumatic events. Some things can be unconscious, but you can have a situation where people have gone through some very challenging times, some very, very difficult times, and there are different examples of trauma. And they have gone through these difficult times that have impacted them emotionally and psychologically. And sometimes they don't know how to deal with these issues. So you have different examples. For example, abuse. And there are a number of people in our homes that have gone through different types of abuse: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect, and so on. And those things impact on them, and they stay with them, and they have different effects on their lives over time. So that's basically an introduction. Things that have happened in your childhood, they've been traumatic, they have impacted you negatively. They may not have been dealt with when you were younger, and they continue to have lingering effects on you even as an adult. So I think that's just a basic introduction to the whole idea of trauma.
And that's interesting. You said that sometimes people are not even aware, that it has happened to them. And that's quite interesting there, that they're not even aware that, it has happened. And that's one of the things about trauma. Let's see if we can greet Mr. Kevin. Are you there? Still not hearing you. What is going on? What is going on? We're not reading lips good either. All right. So let's see if we can resolve that issue. But Bishop Mark, what say you?
Yeah, well, I agree with what Bishop Pastor Bino did say. I think the key thing for me though is that a lot of times, and I guess it's improving now because of with counseling being available and professionals, and people do now look at these things. But I think in the past, a lot of people would be manifesting behaviors, different emotions, and so on, without recognizing that that trauma, some whether it be a sudden death of a loved one when they were young, or whether there might have been some sexual abuse, maybe a catastrophic accident that took place with a family member or something, and then do not realize that they're acting out of that traumatic experience. I think now though, with persons looking at it and so on and studying it, and people who are counselors being trained to look for these things is a little different. But I think in times past, a lot of people manifested certain behaviors and responded to certain situations based on what would have taken place in their past, without necessarily realizing, or would term it that, or would relate it to that trauma that they might have experienced before. And so you find that then is, what should I say, exposed or brought to the fore in how they relate to others, how they deal with stresses and things of that nature.
Go ahead, Sinclair. Go ahead. I think Kevin is still trying to work on his sound issue there. Go ahead, Sinclair.
Okay. Yes, please. Trauma is that wound, that emotional wound that has not been healed. If you like a medical term, you're talking about an open wound, a wound that been there for a while. It's not just a cut. It's not just a scrape. You're talking about something that has deeply impacted the body. And we're talking it from an emotional perspective. This is more just an event. There's something that has traumatized the person that is so major that is inflicting how your responses, your inner child, your personality, and the like. So yeah, so trauma is very much a major thing. And as Bishmar was mentioning, now that we have persons now trained on the ground to deal not with just issues but
Deal with
trauma,
it.
and
Yes.
especially now deal with men in those spaces. Yes.
Is it really an issue that men that we found taboo, or is it that, as you said, we're now at a place where we feel free and we're in a better place to discuss these issues? Because one of the key points there that Pastor Bino said was that, oftentimes we're not even aware of the fact that you may have experienced something traumatic, like maybe the death of maybe a parent early in a child's life. They might not even understand that to be a traumatic experience.
Correct.
They might have just said that
Correct.
it's just, it's life, it happened, but they did not understand the trauma of it. Maybe the then experiencing issues with their relations with maybe authority because of the lack of that, or maybe of a parent figure being there, or the loss of a parent figure. So, is it that we've come to a place now that we are better able or in a better place to discuss it and we're more open? Bishop Mark, you want to go there?
Yeah, as I said, because obviously, with studies and technological advances and so on, we are. But I still think that if you're being specific now about men, that men still are very, I don't want to say cautious, but still find it difficult um, to express certain emotions, or to even admit that maybe something traumatic in the past is what is affecting their ability to even work in marital relationships, to be able to deal with their children in the right way and that kind of thing. So even although those who might have studied and can help men with these issues, and personally these issues, I think still there is a element where men are still find it difficult to respond emotionally, to be more open about these things, because one of the things is that we as men have always been taught that we need to be strong and we need to be tough, and a man don't cry, and therefore what traumatic what when my mother died, I was good, I dealt with it, and so on. And so because of that, we don't get, for want of a better word, mushy enough to be able to relate to these things, unless somebody professionally or we're able to sit down with persons that would help to show us that. So that's really the issue is, because I know, for example, of a young man who lost his mother when he was now, he was very close to his mother, about 17, 18, and he's now a big man. And I've found that in all of his relationships, he suffered because of that traumatic event, right? He's gone through a number of wives. He's got about 5 children from one wife, and because of that event, it's only now he's starting to realize how much a vacuum in his mind his mother left. And so his relationship suffered as a result of that, because he could not believe until he was guided or shown that experience when he was about 18, 19 years old could have affected his present reality. Because even when his mother was sick, and he did not even go to the hospital and so on, because he just could not deal with it. And that affected him in many ways in relation to how he would have dealt with his interpersonal relationships and otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know if Sinclair wanted to jump in there, but I think that's one of the critical issues, that sometimes the way how society has caused us to think as men, and that we have to be, and yes, men need to be strong. So we're not denying the fact that men need to be strong, but also men need to be able to process the emotions that they're going through. They have to
That's right.
process the issues that they're dealing with, the thoughts, the negativity, and so on. And sometimes I think that we in the church, one of the mistakes, there's a lot as Bishop Mark said, there's a lot more study in terms of traumatology and so on, and we're grateful for that. But I think one of the disadvantages about the church is that we tend to spiritualize certain things. And so we tell people simply have faith in God, put your trust in God. And these are powerful concepts, yes. But we also have to give people the opportunity to process what they're dealing with, to talk through the emotions. So sometimes we cut people off. So even at times in Christian counseling, it may not be counseling to the fullest extent. People might just want to give you a scripture verse and tell you put your faith in God and trust in God, but then you don't get the opportunity for that catharsis to take place, where you get the opportunity to pour your heart, pour how you're feeling, reflect on the trauma, and have a safe space where you can discuss the effects of the trauma. So I think we have to be careful that we don't try to take shortcuts to the healing process. Sometimes the healing process will require detailed counseling to address the areas of trauma, the effects of the trauma, how you're feeling, what you're thinking, and so on. So maybe Minister Sinclair can pick up from there.
Yes, please. One of the things we're looking at the effects of trauma, because as I said, it's more than just an event, because it's normally when a person is not prepared. Yeah, this thing happens so sudden that they didn't have the skill set to deal with the issue at hand. It was unexpected, and therefore this person found himself in a very challenging position. Like I said, unexpected, unprepared, and there was little the person could have done to prevent it from happening. So there's only three main things that would cause a trauma. The mere fact it can happen outside or inside the family dynamic is unexpected, the person's unprepared, and it was little that the person can do to prevent this. And because of that, now you can identify why trauma is affecting so many men. And as Marissa was asking, is it that men, I think women also, but the truth of the matter is that now we are beginning to have more of an open forum to discuss emotions and feelings and mental situations, because remember, it's only less than 10 years ago that, you know, it's almost like counseling becomes now a more comfortable conversation, only 20 years ago. But before that, it would have been a challenge.
I like the fact that, you know, we're exploring the deep issues about it, because very often when we think about trauma, we like to put a finger on this, that, you know, we can identify that this is it. This is the reason that maybe it happened. But as you said, through counseling, you are able to identify some of the issues that, you know, what happened then that are affecting now. The effects are here. We're present with it. We're dealing with it, and we need to address it, because it poses and presents limitations on life, because we have not been able to identify and also offer solutions on how we can address it. So Pastor Bunny, you did share a few things with us about some of these issues that might be considered as traumatic. For those of you now joining us, feel free to hit that like button and share the link with some friends, because this is not only for men, even though it is Men on Monday, but it's for women too, because we are talking about childhood trauma and men, and also helping the women to be able to identify, not to poke and prod and to make him feel bad about it, but actually to help bring solutions, because we believe that counseling, and I'm sure that everyone can attest that counseling does help to improve your life. So we're talking about childhood trauma and men. One of the issues we just discussed, as Bishop Mark talked about, was that of maybe the loss of a parent. The loss of a parent being an issue. Pastor Bino, do you want to add anything? I'm going to add Minister Kevin to our show. Let's see if he's got it started. You're ready this evening?
I hope so.
Yes, we are here. We are here. Yes.
I don't know what's going on with my computer, so I had to switch to my phone.
Yes. All right. So yes, Minister Kevin, we want to talk about, we're talking about trauma. We talked about the fact that maybe the loss of a parent, especially for a man. And I want to stick a pin here too, especially a mother. I've seen how sometimes men, when they've lost a mother, they behave, you know, like as Bishop Mark said, they don't want to cry about it. I'm good, I'm tough. But that loss, you know, really poses as a a setback to them, especially if they've not been able to address it and life has not been off also, the best. And as Bishop Mark said, not going to visit one gentleman, not going to visit, affected him in the long run. So go ahead, share your thoughts, Minister Kevin. Then we're going to jump over to Pastor Bino.
Well, based on what Pastor Mark has said, I think most of that comes also from a cultural experience, right? Growing up, we especially in the Caribbean, boys are not really given that opportunity, that safe space to cry and to show true emotions. We're always told to man up, you're soft, stop acting so soft, and going as far as to say, yeah, act like a girl. Growing up in certain communities, if you cry, you're acting like a girl. And so we have never been given that opportunity, that safe space to display those kind of emotions. And so even from a childhood stage, as we grow and develop, the atmosphere is still the same. One would say that we live in a toxic environment where men are not allowed to show a softer side to them. And so even at the loss of appearance, you still don't want to show that side to you because you're not even familiar with that side. You've never really embraced that side of you, because every time you do, you are told to dry those tears up and just man up and be tough about it. Right? And so for me, when I think about that, I feel like when a man cannot cry at his mother's funeral, you know that he really has suffered some trauma from his childhood stage that just continues up to this point.
That's profound, especially coming from a man. When he says a man can't cry, and that's for me, that's sad that even in such a situation, it's expected that you should still be tough when the truth of what you're feeling is real. Go ahead, Pastor Bino.
Yeah, Marissa, thank you, Kevin, for the input there. I hope you guys are hearing me well. I'm seeing some freezing on the screen, but there's so many different types of trauma, and the challenge is that some people go through multiple trauma because some people come from very dysfunctional homes, and then because it affects them negatively, they take a particular mindset to school. So take, for example, in a home where the child is emotionally abused, they're criticized, they're called stupid, they're called all kinds of different names, and that happens repeatedly. And then they go into school and maybe they're unkempt and they're not dressed a certain way, and they can't do the work, and they're perceived as unintelligent and stupid and backward and so on. And so then the emotional abuse that they endure in the home now happens in a different environment at school, where they experience further rejection, further ridicule, further insult, and so on. So there are all kinds of different types of trauma. And at some point in time, I'm going to ask Minister Sinclair to actually go over those 4 characteristics, because I think that those 4 characteristics are very powerful in terms of understanding the nature of trauma. But you have physical abuse. And one of the things about growing up in the Caribbean, whether we realize it or not, we tended to be abusive of our children. We would beat our children with practically anything, with dog hunter, with slipper, pelt rocks at them, throw a bucket, whatever we could put our hands on. And we thought that was normal. And we didn't even know that we were creating trauma in our children, right? You have the emotional abuse, as I mentioned. Sexual abuse is a very covered up thing, but sexual abuse is very prevalent. And it's not just women that are sexual abused. It is boys, older sisters molesting younger brothers, and so on, other family members molesting boys, boys going to school and somebody telling them, show me your penis, an adult, all kind of things. So all of these impact on children. Neglect, not providing the basic needs, not providing things like food and shelter, putting child at the door, telling child you ain't getting enough food tonight, all kind of thing. And again, these things are normalized, but these things are traumatic. Part of it is our history of slavery and the negative way that we were impacted psychologically and how it affected our parenting. So sometimes we felt we were doing good by our children, but we were actually being abusive and impacting the child negatively. So there are all kinds of things. Domestic violence. So imagine, you see your parents and they're not just fighting by coming to blows, cussing out one another. The woman throwing the father's clothes outside the window, and they're back and forth, and everybody in the neighborhood hearing the bacchanal that going on. So all of these are things. Then you have things like natural disasters, accidents that could happen. So you have so many things that could potentially be traumatic. The challenge is the child may not have the coping mechanisms or the environment to process at that point in time what they're dealing with. And so the feelings, all the different pressures, they're buried, and they tend to manifest then later in life. So then we see children acting out, and it can carry over even to adulthood. And so as we go on, we'll look at some of the ways in which it impacts people even into adulthood.
I'm glad you said that, because we now have to unlearn some things that we have come to normalize. And that's the reality. I think that as we get older and with knowledge, then we understand some of the things that we did then, some of the things that we saw and we thought as norm and accepted and even replicated. We have understood now, you know what, this really can't work with this generation. We have to change the way the thing and change some of the things that we have normalized and now have become a pattern and a way of life. Good evening to all of you who are joining us now. We are live on Men on Monday. We are discussing childhood trauma. Melissa Sinclair, you have some knowledge to share with us this evening and talk about those 4 points. Let's dive into those, because we're going to have a part 2 of this. But that's one person this evening. Go ahead, Melissa Sinclair.
Yeah. Sorry, we had some blockage when you were speaking. Just not sure what is jumping. Nonetheless, let's look at some of the causalities of the issues on men when it comes to trauma. And we went through the trauma, but I got Pastor Manny mentioned some things that I think are very impactful when it came to men and what is happening to men in our society, relationship, church, and kingdom of God. Because men of men, because, and just using what you put out there very early, physical abuse. And we could actually go through these things, because I think these things are very deep, and to do justice to the topic. But imagine as a male where you are now in a household and you're almost we talk about the physical abuse, and we talk about punishment here, supposed punishment, corporal punishment, which really is abuse. You know what I'm saying? Get beat with a dog hunter. I mean, getting beat with the thickest belt in the house, getting beat with, whatever this person got their hands on. And then part of it would have been you don't use a man in here. You want to use a man in here. Just that alone, I mean, if we were to honing on that has affected so many men, because you're being punished for being, you born a man. And it's like you're being reduced and truncated from becoming a man. And therefore, it was not a celebration to be a man. It was actually being punished for being a man. So, and you can't even begin to oppose this authority of your parent. And then by extension, because if you ever tried to do that, then you're being rude or being disrespectful. And then there's some men, because when you cry, some homes, when you cried, you get more lashes for crying. You know what I mean? It's like this sadistic mentality of beat you and you cry and they say, let me use something to cry for. Or shut up in here before I give you something to cry for. Or, and you can't even begin to sniffle because, whatever terms, that is a thing. And what has caused with a lot of men is something called disassociation. Because you just got, punished, you're in pain. I know you're not able to identify yourself with the pain or have an expression of that pain. I know the only way you can handle it, because you cannot even challenge the authority. you learn not to speak, you learn not to express, you have to disconnect from your emotions. So now as a grown man, you go into any relationship, be it family, father, husband, church, work, you learn not to connect your emotions, not to cry. So this is manifesting in a lot of hurt in our relationships. And this is one of the traumatic things that, I'm going to toss out to you guys so we could toss that around a little bit to see how that has affected us as men.
Go ahead, Bishop Mark and Kevin, jump in there and share your thoughts as we talk about those triggers. Go ahead, Bishop.
Yeah, I hear what Sinclair was saying there just now about the abuse, but one of the things too that I think is very important for us to look at is that, I think somebody would have mentioned earlier, the environment in which persons come up is also very important. I'll show you what I mean. One of the things I realized in my own family, from my father's side, is that there were not lovey-dovey brothers and sisters. They seem to have always had trauma and all kind of things. And it transitioned into their adulthood. I'll give an example. One person would call the phone and say, "Hey, how are you, everything?" And the conversation would be between a brother and a sister about another sister. And then when the phone put down, another brother with another. This whole thing was going up because a lot of times people come up in environments where they have not been exposed to being able to truly express their feelings and communicate, right? So what they do, they compensate by being aggressive, by being defensive. They compensate by, obviously looking inwardly as to, oh, the body don't like me, I'm the black sheep of the family and so on. And so because of that traumatic experience, then that behavior is transferred later on when they themselves get into the family unit, when they themselves might be a father or a mother and so on, and have to then seek to deal with other pressures. I mean, of being a parent, of trying to get children, you got 3 or 4 in house to behave and so on. And so sometimes become so overwhelmed that they turn to things like alcohol, drugs, or even having outside the marriage relationships and those kind of things to compensate, right? Without truly understanding that it is what went on when they were young that is being manifested now in the present reality. And again, not recognizing that the trauma came from not being accepted or not being, feeling love in your own family. So I think that's also a very important thing, how people have been brought up, and we call it culturalized, and then how that affects the ability to cope as an adult, as a parent, as a husband, as even an employee. Yeah.
Bishop Mark, there's a question there for you. I'm going to allow you to answer that question, and I'm going to allow Kevin to share his thoughts and his views also.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, "Thank you, Bishop Mark, for sharing your own personal experience. How did you deal with that family culture?"
Well, let me tell you the truth. It was not an easy thing to do because I'll be honest here. In my own situation, my father, very intelligent man. I think what happened is that he had a lot of dreams, did not see those dreams. And then when his own children suddenly started to fulfill those dreams, there was this kind of like jealous streak. And he turned to things like alcoholism, abuse, and those kind of things, and things of that nature. But it was very difficult. The important thing for us though is that we had a mother that would compensate somewhat for that. But I think one of the key things that caused us not to turn out the way, I remember I used to drink. I never into the smoking, but how I coped, thank God, was that from very early, I had somebody in our community who would take us as young people to Evangel Temple, to church. And so what you saw at church was that there were people, I had people like the Holford brothers and so on, Charles and late Charles and Michael, who then was able to fill in those gaps, to show the love when we can get it at home or when the abuse was at home, help us how to cope. And in those days, that was a very key thing. Even though your parents did not go to church, they send the children. And I think that helped a lot of us not to turn out in a similar vein and things of that nature. So to cope, was not easy. And as you got older, what happened then, you were older, so you then could stand up and almost physically fight. And sometimes it could have gotten out of hand. As a matter of fact, I had to actually leave home at about 19 or so years old to get away from it. And I witnessed physical abuse and so on, because in trying to cope, I understand as a counselor, but not then. In order to cope, he tried to cope, would do nice things too, look out for his family, provide. But then whenever the alcohol took over, then he became a completely different person. But we had to deal with it from the standpoint of making sure that what we see, we made sure that we brought that is not going to be our story. That's not going to be what happens to us. And thank God for a mother who knew how to pray and persevere.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so for me, when I think about how the environment that we create for our children is very important.
Yes.
You know, Pastor Mark just talked about that. And I just want to piggyback off it, because you see, many times in our homes, one of the things that we can do towards our children, or trauma that we can cause on our children, is that of neglect our children. And right now, I think no more than ever, we're seeing children experiencing more emotional neglect than before. And what you find in place of that attention and affection that the child needs to get from the parent is that they're now given gadgets to soothe them in their times when they're kind of acting up, or even just that becomes their teaching aid, their everything, you know. And so we are having children who are growing up not experiencing true affection, the love and the attention, the cuddling, that warm embrace from parents to say, hey, you know, I'm here, engaging them in conversation. We're not seeing that. And I can tell you, like, you know, growing up in Jamaica and making a comparison to what I see here, while there wasn't a very connected parent kind of network at times, but outside of that was the community that was there for you. So you're learning from the community, and anybody on the street, your neighbors, whoever, once they're an adult, they could discipline you, they could correct you, all of these things, and they're looking out for you. And in that community, in that niche, you get that family experience, right? So you have your friends on the street that lives on the same street, everybody pool together, commune together, we're playing soccer together, we're doing all of these things. No, what you find in this country, first world country, and I'm sure it's probably happening all over, is that there is no real connection happening. Every child is given a gadget the moment they come out of belly. You know, they're just hooked to the screen, and to shut them up, here's your gadget. Don't talk to me, here's your gadget. I need my own private time, here's your gadget. And so these children are not used to experiencing love, attention, and affection. They get so much neglect that when they become adult, they become very attention seeking. You know, and so even in a relationship now, they become these type of women or men who just crave attention, become very needy. You know, I hear some men complain sometimes, you know, during conversations, and why the woman needy. It's like they're very clingy. Every move he makes, she wants to know. He can't get her off of him, and them stick together like glue. Right? And so, no, on a serious note, because sometimes, because of the lack of that kind of an experience as a child, we bring that into our adult years, and we become clingy. And every time we see people who don't want to connect with us as rejection. So every little thing we feel rejected, and then that feeling of I am not good enough. Oh, you don't want to be with me because I'm not good enough. You know, you don't want to hang around me because you think I'm not worth it. So it affects them mentally to the point that they don't even want to value their worth.
So with all this being said, we talk about counseling, we talk about, some of the areas that pose to be traumatic, whether it's, as Pastor Bino said, a natural disaster, the loss of a spouse, the loss of a parent. I want to ask this question. For all of us viewing and listening right now, whether it's via YouTube or Facebook, and by the way, if you are there, please click that like button and that thumbs up and get that image out there, get our video there. How can we find the areas that are traumatic for us? Those difficult areas, sometimes, they say they're triggers, but is that it? How do we know that we are triggered? How do we know that these are traumatic moments in our past that are affecting us now? Who wants to jump in there and start the ball rolling? Because I think that's a very key question. How do you pick them up?
I think that is something that is very difficult. Look, especially to if persons are really, really entrenched in that behavior and doesn't have the ability to really examine these things. It's a difficult thing. And as I tell you, sometimes people get to a certain age and it's only if they come into contact with persons, maybe get an opportunity to really share how they feel and somebody counsel them that they come to that realization. If you, for example, we've had situations, St. Clair could talk about that, where you're counseling even younger people who want to get married and they have certain issues. For example, they feel, for example, that because of how they were brought up, that strongly that the wife should work and still come home and clean the house and cook for them and wash for them, because that is what it is. That is how I've seen it done, and therefore you're not bringing the stress to me. So it is difficult, right, for somebody sitting there saying, me, I understand. Yes, the reason I'm being unkind to St. Clair is because I had a problem with my own father, and every time St. Clair speaks, he reminds me that he wanted to be my father. So there's very few people that are going to be able to sit down and rationalize that is why, that is how they're there, or why, as Kevin said, a very important thing, that a lot of people, because of their low self-esteem and how they've been treated, I think everything now they see out of that experience, and therefore I went through some of that because of rejection of my father. I tried all the years for my father to everything to do. If I went to school and came 20th and my father quarreled, which he would normally do, I went and tried to become 10th. And when I come 10th looking for my father to embrace me, you move from 20th out of 23 to 10th. He figured I should be first. So it ended up with me feeling exactly what Kevin said, that I would go places, and for example, so St. Clair, I'm coming across by you tonight, Bishop, and we can eat some pizza and some food. And then St. Clair calls and say, I can't make it, so I come up, just so. You know what's happened to me? Yeah, so St. Clair no feel that he can't come. Oh, must see somebody else, must see a body somewhere. The reason for that is because I realized years after, that it was my problem with self-esteem. Oh, you don't want to be wrong. We probably got somebody else invited. He put my invitation to the end, right? But you know how I come to realize that I was still suffering from that? When I was actually doing counseling as a young counselor, I realized, something that sounds just like me, right? But for me to realize that was a major problem, I would go to school and I would be speaking to Abby Clown in the class just so as to get the attention. There's one thing that was on me before, talkative. But I think it's because I was going to be a pastor. But secondly, it's because it was all about attention, right? Before I want to start to realize that's because I wasn't getting it from the person that I, up to close his death, that I always saw. I always wanted his affirmation. I can't nobody else. And my mother loved me and showed me that, but I wanted my father's affirmation. I want my father to say, well done. And had I not been serious about the Lord, right, and a serious Christian, my wife could be now the benefactor of maybe some of that negative behavior, calling names, want to be abusive. I've been married for 31 years, and I never once point my finger at my wife and say, you should not, because I saw it, I didn't like it, and I made a determination with God's help never to be like that. You understand? But not everybody has that experience, because a lot of people manifest a lot of the behaviors and the trauma, the effects of the trauma in their present time reality. So it's difficult to recognize. It is very difficult.
Wow.
I don't know what the other guys will say.
Go ahead, Pastor Bueno, Sinclair, Kevin, who's going to jump in there? And our question is, how are we going to get to pick it up? Picking up the triggers.
Yeah, fully agreeing with Mr. Mark. Yeah, fully agreeing with Mr. Mark. It can be difficult. There's some things that can jump out at you because they might be obvious. But one of the things that they recommend is one, have an understanding of the nature of trauma. Yeah, so some things you have to do a little reading and see what types of trauma they are, and then you have to sit down, evaluate your life, and look at some of the things that would have happened to you. Did I encounter physical abuse? Did I encounter emotional abuse? Did I go through some major disaster? For example, COVID would have affected a number of people, a number of children. So it might take years before we see the full effects of COVID. But that's one of the things that would have happened. It was definitely traumatic from an educational perspective, because a lot of students fell behind. Some students couldn't cope with the technology, and some students didn't have devices and so on. So you have to be able to reflect on different areas of your life, and sometimes that can be difficult. So that's where you need a counselor to walk you through, to answer you particular questions, so that you can see what happened in your life. Sometimes we go through traumatic things and we just bury them. When we push them aside, we think, well, this is normal. Yeah, so being physically abused, that's normal. Being sexually abused, that's normal. And then again, we might be reinforced the wrong way. We're told be strong, so we're told don't cry, and so on. So then we normalize certain negative feelings. So as Bishop Mark said, it can be difficult, and sometimes you have to have somebody help you to better reflect on what you have gone through, to identify those traumatic events.
Go ahead, Minister Sinclair. Kevin, go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin. Let's leave Sinclair for the last, because I want to be able to expand on some.
Sinclair for last. So, I like to speak from the average everyday man perspective, because here's the thing. We have to also realize that the average man don't even stop for a minute to ponder these things. That's the real. You see, when we come into this kind of an experience, whether through Christendom or even just through education, formal education, and having this platform to talk to these men and hear these men speak, this is how we get to explore our mental state and the experiences that we have had, and now feel the need for counseling. But the average man don't even stop to think about these things. All he knows is that this is what I do. He's not, if you talk to him, it's through counseling, and that's where counseling is so important, and we have to keep pushing counseling on everybody, because it is necessary for people to understand that there are so many different ways in life and stages in life we'll experience trauma, and when we do, we need to find an outlet, and we also need to find a way in which to deal with these things. But when I think about it, for example, growing up as a young man, if I'm promiscuous, all I'm gonna be hearing, is that, boy, your dads, you're the boss, you have whole heap of girls. If I should go complain as a teenager to a friend or a man in the community to say a girl or a woman raped me, what? How can you talk about a woman raping you? That's crazy. You should be feeling like a king. You understand? So the community or the environment flip the script on you, and now instead of you feeling shameful or feeling abused, you have now a feeling of being lauded, like, this is something wonderful that has happened to you. And so even as you experience that now, it's almost like you want to always get that accolade. So you now put yourself in the position where it's now I am going to chase the girls and I have to have as many girls as possible, because the more girls I have, the more accolades I get from the men in the community and all of these things. But they don't understand that inside it is an abuse that we experience, and the trauma that from that abuse is what we are acting out now. Right? But the community or the environment that we're in makes us to feel like this is normal and this is okay. And that's one of the experience that the average man is having, where every day he gets up, he is seeing this, he is experiences this, and so it is normalized to him. In a community where a girl becomes sexually active at the age of 12, 13, there's some garrison communities in Jamaica, by the girls are 11, 12 years old, or probably even younger, they are sexually active by older men, by big men in the community. And that for them is normal. They don't consider it abuse, they just consider it normal. This is what happened, right? And so when they grow up, not having that protective layer from a childhood stage, the nobody covering for them, parents not really protecting them, then they look for the affection and the attention from men, and they become promiscuous. And so when I think about it, it's like from my perspective, on the average man perspective, we have to get into this this forum, this format, to get into the community, to get into the homes, to say, listen, man, you have to start thinking about the things that you have experienced. We have to really think, because for me, there are some things that I have experienced that I've possibly buried. And it's when I experience something as an adult, it brings me back to my childhood days when something happened. And I was like, oh, I know I feel this certain way, and I don't know what to do with that feeling. I need counseling, and I have to get connected with people like that to give me answers and help me to resolve it.
Let me just say, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about, how many times have we just sat and buried things that should have really been, addressed? As Kevin said, the whole thing about how a man is supposed to be considered a man after experiencing trauma, and then not being able to, to address it. And that's why I often hear St. Clair talk about the block and the rum shop being the place of healing for a lot of men, but they also celebrate the trauma that they've been through as, something to be, to wear a crown about. But that's quite interesting that you shared that, Kevin. Some great points there.
Yeah, Marissa, just before Sinclair jumps in, there are a number of negative things that are happening in society. And Kevin referenced, older men taking advantage of younger girls and that being normal. But one of the things that we're also seeing a situation where older men are taking young boys and initiating them, in sexual activity and so on. There are incidents that happen where young boys are molested and taken advantage of, and that is traumatic. But how do you talk about that? How do you talk about the fact that as a young boy you were taken advantage of sexually by another man that you trusted, that may have been a father figure or a person in the community that you should be able to look up to, and that person took advantage of you? So how do you deal with that? And so there are a number of things that happen that are very traumatic, and it's very difficult now talking about these things, and some situations do end up in court system.
Yeah.
But even that now is a further traumatizing experience, and some parents don't bother to go through the process because
It's too much.
it is just as traumatizing on the child as the event that happened. So there are a lot of things that happen. But let me let Sinclair jump in there.
Not too sure why I'm supposed to jump in and say, but
Agree,
Yeah.
disagree. I'm sure you have some thoughts.
Yeah, just agreeing with going with extending the points of as you always hear me say that people say they want men to talk, but when we do, nobody wants us to. That truth. And that's why a lot of men learn to shut up. And it's like you're talking too much, or you're being too expressive, or you're being a lot. And so men learn to get more inside themselves. Just going with what Kevin was mentioning, we talk about sexual abuse and Pastor Bino mentioned. And I think that's one of the biggest white elephants in the Caribbean. Because when you look at the social statistics, the amount of men that have been sexually molested by women and abused by men and raped by men. And once again, you can't have a voice in that area, to be quite honest. You know, mothers, friends, and aunties and around meals and exposing them to pornography or different things of oral sex, different things like that. So by the time this male is in the environment, he had an encounter with physical sex without going through love, affection, emotions, and that journey. So now he's sexualized and his brain is sexualized. But nobody is in shock if a 13-year-old boy said, this 30-year-old woman molested me. Nobody is enamored. But if you hear this 13-year-old girl says this 30-year-old man, even touched her, let's get the pitchforks and and crucify him. So men do not have the same urgency where we are concerned. So we have to live with these things: sexualized, molested, rape, because we can't discuss the fact that rape as a young boy or molested as a young boy by an older male or even a male even in the same area, and now we have homosexual tendencies. And we go into the church, and the church is not equipped for that, because here I am married and different things, but I'm having these feelings, and therefore am I not saved? Am I not delivered? Am I not sanctified? So I can't talk about it, because how do I say that I'm still attracted to men?
Yeah.
So that is a trauma in itself, and we're not prepared for it. So I do believe that is an interesting topic. My heart would be for us to tread this, and I think we could touch each one. It's so broad. I would like us to be able to look at each one of the how these have affected men over the years.
Yeah, some real truth there, and as Kevin said, leading to Minister St. Clair's point, I was in a chat today, and that was actually the post of a gentleman. I found him so vulnerable in sharing that he is a believer. He believes in God, but he's having these challenges. And of course, I'm here for the comments, and I went to the comment section, and the truth is that there was no one that was able to offer any reasonable solutions to walking out this, because St. Clair, many of the church folk, many of us as a church, we don't even know how to be able to start to address that and to help a person find peace and come to a place of healing when they're facing such trauma. And for me, this is real, because it's not only about the homosexual tendencies, but it's about finding peace as a person and being able to live out your life in the purpose that God has called you to live it out in. And I find that we are not able to, because we're not truthful, we're not vulnerable, and we're also not equipped with the tools that are necessary to be able to. Maybe after this show, when we write our book, Men on Monday, we'll be able to offer some truths and some help to some guys and to some girls out there. It's been a real interesting discussion this evening. I don't know about you, but my head is here churning as so much truths, and I'm glad that the men have been so vulnerable to share this evening. And for those of you who are with us, feel free to hit that thumbs up button, like it, and subscribe to the channel, because part 2 is coming your way next week. We'll have the gentleman here, and I'm going to sit this one out next week and let the men just share and have their space, so that we can sit and learn, even at their feet, with some of the truths and offering solutions and offering real solutions. So wherever you are, hit that thumbs up button, whether you're on YouTube, on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Men on Monday. Thanks, Pastor Bino, Minister St. Clair, Bishop Mark, Minister Kevin, for sharing with us this evening. Bishop Mark, don't forget to tell them about your book. Tell them about your book that's on Amazon right now.
Yes, Truth for Living, some biblical principles for Christian living. I've tried to make it as concise as possible. I pray that people would use it as a study guide and something to empower them to, fulfill purpose and to walk for the honor and glory of Almighty God. It's available on Amazon, or if you're in Barbados, you can call me. You can find me, even over you can find me, and I will deliver signed copy to you. Yes, please.
Yeah, I need to get my signed copy. So let's just get that right there. All right. Well, I want to say thanks to you guys. And Mother's Day is coming up. People, Mother's Day right there on your screen. Signature Cakes by M. Mother's Day. Get that cake. Your bento cupcakes. I'm telling you, that's been a fantastic box. Check it out. And the single layered heart-shaped cakes, 6-inch 25 and 8-inch 35. You can call 365-440-0412 for your orders for Signature Cakes by M. That's right. And of course, get your cakes for Mother's Day. To all of you, thank you so much for joining us today on Men on Monday. And thank you so much for being a part of our show. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. That has been today's edition of Men on Monday. I'm Marissa Boyce. Bye-bye. And also, big shout out to all of our first-time viewers on with us tonight. Bye-bye. Transformation happens here on Unifying Family. Men on Monday, Women on Wednesday. Real talk, real issues, real solutions. Unifying Family, building strong families.